So, welcome to my first attempt at trying to lead you through some gentle movement. Right now, you can see I'm just kind of leaning over and trying to touch my toes just to see how my back is feeling on this given day after traveling. And the first thing that I'm going to start with is placing my feet against the wall, or the radiator in this case. My hands are right underneath my shoulders and my head is slightly lifted. I'm pushing my shoulders away and into the floor and then trying to take a deep breath in, almost like I want to be feeling if there was somebody with a hand on my upper back between my shoulder blades. I'd want to feel that my breath was allowing that hand to rise. And if that feels pretty comfortable for you, you can also drop to your elbows, as you can see me doing here, and then just spend a couple breaths in the same vein, just attempting to take deep breaths in with the head slightly lifted and sending breath to that area between the shoulder blades, and then breathing all the way out through an open mouth, preferably, so kind of like your jaw is a little bit dropped instead of clenched. And as you are going through cycles of breathing out, you can also start to feel that might connect a little bit to the feeling of an abdominal brace through your pelvic floor, so almost as if you're lifting your belly away from the floor and up towards the ceiling. But if this is super difficult, don't feel like you have to think too much about it. And you can just focus on your breath. As you go along, you may also find that the shoulders want to sag through, so it can be really helpful to keep reminding yourself to push out. And now what I'm going to do is advance to the next exercise, which is basically bear plank to downward dog. So if this is really difficult for you to be having your hands right under shoulders and then pushing your hips up towards the ceiling to try to get legs straight, you can also take a rest in between. So having your knees come all the way down to the floor as opposed to hovering. You can also limit your range of motion by moving your hands further away from the wall, or simply by just not pushing back as far. And in this position, your breath can help you too. You can take a deep breath in when you're in your bear plank, and then as you go downward dog, you want to be breathing all the way out. And when you're ready, you can start to do this little reach that I'm doing, crossing one arm to the opposite leg, but the breathing pattern stays the same. So if you notice that from side to side there's a little bit of a difference, that's completely okay, and you don't have to be symmetrical. You can actually do more on the side that feels tighter to you and spend more time there if you'd like. All you have to do is just pause this recording. So after we've done that bit, I've basically turned myself onto my back and my palms are open and maybe about 30 degrees from my side. And here I'm really focusing on sending some air through the area of my pecs, so just my chest, which may seem counterintuitive to you if you're someone who has been taught to breathe through your belly. There's nothing wrong with breathing through your belly, but we don't only want to be doing that. So in this position, just kind of allowing yourself to embrace a little bit of rest here. You want to take a deep breath in, sending that air up into the chest, and then breathe all the way out. Again, maybe getting that slight abdominal contraction as you breathe all your air out. And if you are someone who is pretty adept with pelvic floor contraction, you can also attempt to do things like waterfall breathing, which would mean you might contract the pelvic floor first and then take a little bit of a breath in and then breathe in a little bit more, and then breathe in a little bit more, and then breathe all that air out again. So again, just taking some time here to do whatever feels most relevant to you. And when you're ready, we're going to try to do a little bit of waking up of the hamstrings. So you can see my whole foot is planted here. And what I'm doing is taking my breath in, and then on my out breath, I am dragging my heel down the wall so that I can feel my pelvis kind of tucking underneath me and my hamstrings activating. That opposite leg that's not on the wall should be tucked up, however is comfortable, but should be tucked up just to keep the pelvis neutral. And for most people, this movement is going to be more difficult on one side or just more awkward on one side than the other. Our biggest goal is just to get the hamstring to start to feel like it's waking up a little bit. And if you can coordinate your breath with that, that's great, but not a necessity if it feels like too much to think about. So I believe I am doing about 10 reps per side here, but again, if you know that you have a little bit more need on one side than the other, you can feel free to focus on that side. Coming to the last few here. And we're now going to move into a standing position to see if we can transfer some of what we've woken up into what happens when we stand. So we're basically doing a slightly modified single leg deadlift, if that's something that you've done in your practice and you're familiar with. You want to stand with your foot facing straight ahead, and then basically try to point both hip bones in the same direction. But as you can see here, I'm actually trying to tilt a little bit further down and towards my left hip. So my right hip bone, along with my right elbow, I'm trying to sort of move over across the line of my left toe. And there are lots of reasons for this, but basically can just help with lengthening the pelvic floor and strengthening the glutes through their full range of motion. Obviously, the entire motion can help with balance as well. And I think I'm just doing maybe 5 reps per side here, but you can absolutely do more than that or less, or take the entire thing slower. You can also hold on to something as you go down, so if you want to be hanging on to a wall. And then from here, we're going to move back down to the floor to wake up our adductors a bit. So that's the inside of the thigh. So this can be a little bit of a tricky position. So if you need to, you do not have to be straightening that top leg. You can bend it a little bit. You can place it on a chair or a cushion or a couple pillows, and it can be bent at the knee. But this little cross body pattern of moving my right elbow towards my left knee can often feel pretty good after you've been traveling. And the only other big thing is just to make sure that your shoulder, your elbow is right underneath the line of your shoulder. And after all of that, if you want to just take a little moment here, almost like a child's pose that you're sitting in, you can just sit and hug your knees and take some deep breaths in, again, sending that air to the area between your shoulder blades, and then breathing all the way out as many times as you need. And wherever you are noticing that there might be tension, whether it's in the jaw or in the hips, not forcing anything, but just inviting yourself to be curious about whether you could let some of that tension go. And maybe at the end of this practice here, just noticing what it feels like to have been able to move a little bit and to be able to take some time for yourself to recognize the parts of your body that are willing to work with you and some that are in need of encouragement and more learning. Knowing that at any point in the day, as you go along, you can access this feeling just by accessing your breath. And if we do a little check just to see how we're feeling relative to when we began, definitely able to get a little farther.